Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. We're so excited that you are tuning in and joining us for another episode. We hope that you enjoyed the closeout of Black History Month. And now, of course, we're in Women's History Month, and we know who runs the world. Well, thank you for being with us, sharing, watching the replay, and including your thoughts and commentary on what's shared on the show. Hi, Deborah. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. As always, one of our loyal listeners. And Senor Pichardo. Ed Pichardo is on assignment today. So holding it down is our legal expert, Royce Russell Esquire. So, Mr. Russell, you want to greet the audience?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another segment of Speaking Legally, where the legal and the cultural meet. And what we're going to discuss today, you're definitely going to hear about the culture and you're definitely going to hear about the legal. Is worthy of a replay like every one of our shows. And so, as we do what we do, let's do it.
Absolutely. So we want to start first with, a loving shout out as a Black woman. It is important to celebrate history in what we see unfolding around us. And for those who might not be familiar and you weren't watching the news, an historic nomination has been made, and we are celebrating that today in the person of, hopefully, we can call her Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, but she's the first nominee. Well, he nominates her with the hopes of her being the first Black woman to sit on the Supreme Court. So this nomination is historic, and we are celebrating with her in advance for a smooth opportunity to sit before these hearings and get approved. But I don't know. What do you say, Mr. Russell?
Nothing is ever smooth in this world, right? Even the best bet is not the best bet because people are unpredictable. I mean, we know that she has the pedigree, Harvard grad. We know she clerked for the Supreme Court, not just any old court, the Supreme Court, right? So there are the footsteps to success right there. She also has been a federal judge for at least a decade. She has what most people value the most. I don't necessarily value it, but I mean, it is valued in the legal community. What they say, big firm experience. And I say all this to say that when you have big firm experience and you are a federal judge and you clerk for the Supreme Court, you're going to meet people what I call, and let me try to size it up and be politically correct in what I say it, first rung people. And so, what do I mean by that? This is where the cultural and the legal meet. So, let me speak about culturally. What I call first rung are those that go to certain institutions such as Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Northwestern, Cornell, UPenn, and I'm sure I'm missing some others. That when an opportunity comes, Stanford, Cal Berkeley, when an opportunity comes, they're the first one. They get the phone call, right? So that's why we get the word first rung, right? Because the phone rang already, so they're the first rung, right? So they get the phone call first. The opportunity comes to them first. Uh, those that are in that element, in that sphere, they have the opportunities and hold position of power. Not all. Now, I'm not spreading peanut butter across the bread, right? I'm not saying all, but majority of the time, this holds true. We all work hard for our opportunities, and I'm sure she worked hard to get into Harvard. Right. One of the things that we joke around, I'm blessed to have a son that goes to Northwestern, one of the top 10 schools, is that it's harder to get in than to fail out. But once you're in, you're in. And some of the people that are supporting her is like Stephen Rosenthal, Luddington, some big wigs, folks that play in an arena that I wouldn't be shocked if you didn't know their names, right? They play in a super arena. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but I know business is done in a variety of places, and it's done in the golf course, or it's done at the football game. And the people that I'm talking about right here that she socialized with, they're not at the football game, they're not at the golf course, but business is getting done at a high level. They,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they may be at the country club where golf is being played, or they may be at the Smithsonian one night where they're doing a gathering or fundraiser for something or someone where $10,000 a plate, $50,000 a plate. Somebody's running for a certain position, and
Right.
minds come together and say that we're going to back this person. And why do I say that? And why do I bring the culture in here? Because um, if she's true to her culture, she's going to be fighting herself at some point because she's also a conservative. And this is where culture and politics is meeting. Conservative, culturally African American. Where does that lead you? Um, what's the end result of that? One of the things that I wrote down about her doing my research is that one of the people that are endorsing her says that she prides herself on knowing the effect that law has on individuals. That's important because in our community, we know that laws are passed day in and day out, and really, to a degree, are people looking at how folks either on the lower end of the social economic ladder, how the law is affecting them, or someone who is black and brown, how the law might be affecting them? So knowing that gives me hope. But this will be an interesting study where you see politics and culture
Mm-hmm.
come together. And I'm
Coming
not
in.
clapping, I'm talking about clashing, you know? So,
Mm.
but I look
Oh,
forward to
absolutely, and we look forward to this nomination going through without the sometimes filibustering and interruptions and all the other things that we've seen play out previously. But we are proud of her as a woman, definitely as an African American woman, and what this historic nomination means. So we're rooting for you and wishing the best for the confirmation hearings for our hopefully soon to be Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
and I can see in the future,
Mhm.
uh, they're gonna call her Justice KBJ. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
how it goes. That's
I
how it
like
goes,
that.
right?
I like the ring to
That's
it.
how it goes. We got LeBron with LBJ. We're gonna have KBJ. You know what I mean? That's how it goes, and that's how they're gonna refer. Because I see she uses all of her names, and
Yes.
so the Justice KBJ said, "Power to the people." You know.
Well, we look forward to be able to say that and enjoy the fact that I too have multiple initials, so I appreciate the KBJ. But now
No, no,
we're
no. You gonna stay Dr. Grant. We ain't running with no, you know,
I
Dr.
like my
Stacy,
initials.
Dr.
NC,
Stacy
NC.
NC
Give me
Grant,
my NC. Give me my NC.
NC, we're gonna stick with the
Woo.
Dr. Grant.
Oh, Lord. Okay, Mr. Russell. So now we're on to, unfortunately, the challenges that we see happening across the globe, and our condolences go out to the families who have lost children and lives in this unprompted and unwarranted attack on the country of Ukraine and the citizens. And now it's starting to become, a national, international issue. There's a lot going on in the media. It was even addressed in the State of the Union by our president. So this is another opportunity for us to really get into understanding what's going on. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to you in this process so that we can get a better understanding of what we see unfolding and what the Biden administration is faced with this decision making. And I'll be right back.
Yeah. So one of the things I would say to this is that as COVID is releasing its hold on the court system and the legal system, we're starting to see courts come back to norm and things come back to norm. And one of the courts and one of the areas of the law that is going to come back to a norm is going to be the area of immigration. You haven't seen or heard a lot of removals or deportations from the United States. You haven't seen a lot of talk about it or reform around it. Um, I am certain, as a practitioner in immigration law, that whatever has been handed down in reference to any orders for people to be removed from the United States, they're probably not being effectuated because of not wanting to be in contact, and because of the entering and leaving the country and the dynamics that go with that. I say all this to say that soon come, we're going to start to see that becoming very active. And so here's a warning shot. Here's a shot for the listening ear. Don't be naive in thinking that you can stay in the United States if you're here legally, and that ICE, Immigration, Customs and Enforcement, Department of Homeland Security is not keeping a watchful eye. Once the masks come down, they will come forward to execute whatever orders that they can. And so, why is that important? That's important because it speaks directly to the pressure that this article is talking about. Biden's administration faces pressures to let Ukraine stay in the United States. So let me continue with the first part. There are a segment of every culture, of every race, and we are all immigrants, unless we are Native Americans in America, that are here illegally in the United States, illegally from foreign countries. And those individuals might be faced with what we call a removal order, also known as a deportation order. And let me digress a little bit. Deportation and removal is synonymous. They mean the same thing. Why we went from the term of deportation to removal had to deal with being politically correct. Deportation sounds draconian. It doesn't sound like anything that is nice, um, versus removal, which means that you'll be removed from the country to go back to your home country. That sounds a little bit more polite. It sounds a little bit more cleaner. Um, it's soft on the ears, but it means the same thing. So there are groups of Ukrainians that are in the United States that probably have orders of removal. That means at some point before COVID, they were ordered by a judge to leave the United States. Maybe they don't have to go back to the Ukraine, but they have to leave here. And I'm quite sure, as a practitioner in this area, that they haven't left. And so when you have the lifting of COVID, the implementation of courts going back in full steam, and you have Ukrainians, because we have the war in the Ukraine, not we, but Russia is invading Ukraine, and we have an interest in that. Those individuals that have removal orders will be asked to leave the country, might be forced to leave the country. Hence, the article says that the Biden administration faces pressure to let them stay. Well, you just can't just let them stay. Like, what does that look like? You just stay and that's it? Where we have other immigrants from other countries that are here legally, and for whatever reason, something is happening in their country and they're not going back. It may not be war. So, what and how do we allow this to happen? Really, how do we allow this to happen? There is a form of relief called temporary protective status, and that is extended by the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security to certain groups of people. And so TPS, as we call it, temporary protective status, and that's what the Biden administration is facing. And I don't know if it's so much pressure. It might be the moral thing to do. And TPS stands for temporary. So this war will have a beginning and the end. Temporary protective status, where they are not forced to go back to their country, being Ukraine's, right? And so, what do you need to have? What are the elements? What are the requirements? You have to be foreign born. That means you live in the Ukraine or your nationality of Ukraine. You have to be unable to return safely to your home country. because either one of the conditions or because circumstances prevent you from going back, such as war, such as an armed conflict. And so, therefore, the United States say you can stay. Now, why is this culturally important? It's culturally important because we have seen on the news that Africans that are in the Ukraine are not getting a fair shake. It's been on the national news how when it comes down to individuals going to refugee camps or being evacuated, the Africans are left and white Ukrainians are brought onto the bus and taken to a safe haven. I'm not making it up, it's there. So if there are Africans that are in Ukraine and this is happening, you better believe of the 345,000 Ukrainians that are in the United States, some of them could be African, and they should be able to have this same form of relief, temporary protective status, TPS, so they can stay in the United States. Now, this is not a new phenomenon. Don't I don't want you to be mistaken that this form of relief was developed just for the Ukrainians. No, because it's been around. The last time it was used when Afghanistan interpreters was seeking temporary protective status because the Taliban was coming back in and regaining power, and so they need to stay. They need to hibernate. It has been a long-lasting form of relief, temporary protective status, for those that live in Haiti, Haitians, because, as I said before, TPS deals with the conditions within the country, and for Haiti, it is natural conditions. It is conditions that are presented by the environment, not politically related. And in cases of Afghan and Ukrainians, that's a position or condition that's created by other forces, war, armed conflict, that create the situation that the United States implement what they call temporary protective status. Now, temporary protective status should have a beginning and the end, but sometimes it doesn't. Um, I've seen and litigated and watched certain countries have temporary protective status for an immense amount of time. Syria, Somalia, the Sudan, Yemen, Venezuela, El Salvador, and Haiti. I'm not voicing an opinion about it. I'm just saying it does exist, right? And I want to be culturally fair. Yes, Dr.
So, with you explaining that it does exist, what creates the standard for how it exists so that folks can also understand how these decisions are made?
Well, what creates a standard is what is going on in the other country. So in Haiti, you had I think it was earthquakes or you had tsunamis, you had conditions that made it unlivable, inhabitable to reside, to go back. In Afghanistan, as I said, it was the Taliban coming in, creating war, creating strife. In Ukraine, you have Russia creating this war. In Venezuela and El Salvador, is because of the conditions um, of weather and environment. So each country has a different leg to stand on for that. And so for those who have orders of removal, they should apply for it. For those that are in the United States illegally, they should apply for it. I just want to make a note that this is a good time to distinguish it from asylum, right? Those are asylum is one form of relief, and TPS is another form of relief that kind of gives you the same protection. TPS deals with a condition of a country as a whole, earthquakes, flooding, war, um, some type of environmental disaster, versus asylum, which is individual. Someone's after you because you're a revolutionary. You're a revolutionary. You're speaking out against the government. You have a political opinion that is not fond of in the government, or you're in a Muslim country and you're a Christian, or you are Muslim in a Christian country, or you're speaking out against the government. So it's very particular as to you. And then you have to show under an asylum theory that you've been persecuted in the past, or you'll be persecuted in the future. So if I come to the United States and I'm here legally, and I've never seen this happen, but I am here legally, and I become a Christian and I become prominent in the religion of Christianity. Uh, I stay here illegally. No one knows that I'm here illegally. All of a sudden, something happens in my parish, something happens in my church. I'm outspoken. I make all these wonderful connections. And here I am on this platform, and I'm being forced to be removed from the United States. Well, there's an opportunity to say, hey, I want to file for political asylum, because if you send me back to my country and I'm this Christian in a Muslim country, they're persecuting me, or they're persecuting Christians. So therefore, you shall allow me to stay under the asylum theory. And that has to deal with country reports and things of that nature. That is a little bit more detailed, a little bit more particular. There has to be a little bit more fact finding. Whereas TPS, it is easily and readily defined. You can see it is in the paper. It's usually nationally known. It's usually something that everybody recognizes. And those people are asking for forgiveness and relief to stay in the United States. Now, let me say, I spoke a lot about Ukrainians because we're talking about this subject matter, and we're talking about this group of people who are here illegally. There are groups of Ukrainians that are here legally, such as F1. And what is an F1? F1 visas are for students that are here academically. There's about 2,000 of them, roughly, that are here academically. There are Ukrainians that are here legally because they're working. They're what you call Ukraine nationalists. That means either they were born in the Ukraine or they have a Ukraine passport, but they've been here for a period of time. And every year they have to get something renewed, their employment or their labor cert to get renewed so they can stay in the United States based upon employment. Sometimes employment has a beginning and end. And so if they're at the end of their employment, where do they go? They can't go back home. So that's where TPS also comes into play, where you have that protective status and you can stay. If you're a student and you're in your senior year and you're getting ready to graduate, well, what happens? You can't go back home. Once again, form of relief.
Interesting.
TPS, you can get that. Now, in most cases, what they do with students, they being immigration, is that you allow what they call a grace period, a year after you graduate, to either work or either actually become a tourist, because you came here under the student visa and you've been working as a student. Now you get a chance to enjoy the United States. So let's say that it happens. And now it becomes a time and place where you need to go back home. But you can't because of what's happening in your country. Hence, TPS comes into play. Now, the big question, which I'm surprised, Dr. Grant, you haven't brought this up, but the big question, and this is the question that the presidency was fought over, is what is the path to citizenship? Right? I get this temporary protective status. Can I now become a citizen? Can I now become a legal permanent resident? What does it afford me to do outside of staying here? Good question. I have a very good answer for you. Fortunately, I'm here with the answer, right? And that is that there is no clear answer as to whether or not temporary protective status can lead to becoming a green card holder, which is a legal permanent resident or a lawful permanent resident. Um, it's kind of gray. It's a little cloudy. There are things that you can do to try to perfect it, but it is not a bright line that because you have TPS that you automatically become a green card holder. Now, let's hold that for a second because we're going to come back to that. You can imagine a place where you're here illegally and you want the benefit of becoming a green card holder. And then out of nowhere, this temporary protective status is bestowed upon you based upon what is happening in your country. And now you think that there's a light and there's a way for you to become a legal permanent resident. This is why I said it's partly cloudy. The answer is no for that individual. Because if you came into the country illegally and the United States was so benevolent to allow you to stay because of the strife or conditions that happen in your country, once that is over, you return back to your original status. That means you came here illegally. So
Wow.
the United States is not going to allow you to come in illegally, benefit from something that just happens that you have no control over. No one has control over. And then because of that, you then now benefit and become a green card holder, even though you came in illegally. So that's why having the relief of temporary protective status does not lead directly to a path of citizenship. But there is a way. There is a way. And for those that just joined us, we're talking about temporary protective status because we know what the strife is going on in Ukraine. We know that here in the metropolitan area, New York, New Jersey, and across the world, that there are Ukrainians that are here legally, illegally, and they're wondering whether or not they have to go back. And we also brought this up because the culture meets the legal, and we know culturally that the Africans in Ukraine are being treated poorly in reference to being able to go to refugee camps. And we extrapolate that further, we could imagine and we could see a world where Africans are treated poorly when it comes down to trying to seek these type of relief, which is temporary protective status. So that's what brought us here to this subject matter today. And the reason why I bring it up, because I know our good listener and watcher, Kev, he was on the train, right? And so
And still tuning in.
everything, so he don't have to sit through the replay, But then again, he can. So anyhow, as I was saying, temporary protective status is not going to allow you to take a wrong and make it right. So the answer to direct legal permanent residency, which is directly related to becoming a citizen, no can do. Sorry, go back home, start all over, can't pass jail. Right? On the Monopoly board, you got to go back. However, if you came into the United States legally, tourist visa, then we have the war in Ukraine, or we have the environmental catastrophe in Haiti or El Salvador or Venezuela. Then you're here legally. If temporary protective status is removed from you, you still have legal status. And so either way, you're able to do what I'm gonna put in air quotes because I'm going to define it, adjust your status to become a legal permanent resident. So let me say it all over again. You come into the country legally, tourist visa. You come into the country under working, labor certification. You come in the country because you're a student. Something happens in your country. In the United States, something happens in your country. You then bestow this temporary protective status to extend your stay in the United States. While you're here in the United States, you now want to become a legal permanent resident. The answer is yes, you can do that, but there's only certain ways that you can do that. And I'm speaking to the 30,000 Ukrainian nationalists here, the 2,000 students that are here that are Ukrainian, the 345,000 Ukrainians that live in the United States based upon some studies, that there is a path, but you have to choose the right path. Now, let me put a pin in that. There's a whole section of Ukrainians that are here that don't care about that. What they care about is that I'm here, I'm safe, and can I work? So let me answer that question first. You can work. One of the benefits of having temporary protective status is that you're able to receive employment authorization, and that is called the Employment Authorization Card, EAD, also known as Form I-765. That's I-765. And so you could imagine, now you're in America, you're here, you're a student, you are a tourist, you are here illegally, and now you bestowed this benefit or this relief, form of relief of temporary protective status with the benefit of being able to work. That's huge.
Big difference.
That's huge. You're able to provide. Now you're on the books. Now you can provide for your family on the books. Something happens to you in your job, you can sue your job. Something, you get workers' compensation, you variety of things. You can sue for labor an hour. You could do a variety of things because now you're legally on the books. And if you're here in the United States illegally and you're not put in removal proceedings and you're here for 10 years continuously and you have no criminal background and you have a legal permanent resident or a U.S. citizen child or wife or loved one and you're put in proceedings, then maybe you open up the door to be able to apply for cancellation of removal, which is a form of relief that says, Judge, we need to cancel this proceeding, cancel my removal from this country because I can establish I've been here for over 10 years. I've been here working and contributing, paying taxes. I have a U.S. family member, mother, father, sister, brother, son or daughter, wife that can sponsor me or that will suffer extreme, excuse me, extraordinary, extreme hardship. So I need to stay. Now, I mention this because everything is not an all or nothing. And sometimes culturally, we think of all or nothing and we don't think about the baby steps that it takes to get to where you want to go. And so applying for something like TPS can leave the door open for some other forms of relief. Worst case scenario, I just mentioned, which is cancellation of removal, where you're before a court and you're before a judge, but you have these factors that say, no, as MC Hammer says, can't touch this. Do no no no.
Really?
Do touch
Oh
this.
boy.
Do no no. Do no. Do no. Now look, those are beautiful words when you walk out of an immigration court. As a matter of fact, that's your background music when you walk out of the court. To say the least, as you kick your heels, Dorothy walking the yellow brick road. I get it. I've I've had clients kick their heels and hug me and do a variety of things because we won the day. But if you're not in immigration proceedings, what could you do? So you have the temporary protective status. You decide that you want to become a legal permanent resident. You came into the country legally. You can apply for what they say a family petition. And a family petition is basically where uh, your child who's over 21 years of age, your parents, your spouse, uh, your your siblings with a question mark can apply for you if they are U.S. citizens to become a U.S. citizen without you having to be put on a priority list. Let's put a pin on that word priority list because we'll get to it. Um, and you're able to petition. And now, because of your petition, if you're approved, that means they believe that you are family members, which is hard to not believe that, right? If your mother or father is filing for you, they have a birth certificate. It might be hard to obtain it, but once you have it, it's there. Or the birth certificate of your mother and father to show that, hey, this is your brother or sibling or sister because you have the birth certificate that show that. Or if you're the parent of a legal permanent resident or a U.S. citizen, it should be easy to show that. If you are getting married, it should be easy to show your marriage certificate in reference to who your spouse is. Uh, And if all those people that I mentioned under a family petition are U.S. citizens, then if your petition is approved, which is a I-130 petition, I'll say it again, a I-130 petition, a family petition, then you can adjust your status and apply to become a legal permanent resident pursuant to I-485 application. That's a lot.
That is a whole lot. But this is where the legal meets the cultural. And while we are highlighting what's happening over in the Ukraine, we still have a lot of people culturally who need to know this information and need to know the difference in how they can move themselves into a permanent resident status.
Right. So, once again, I mention all of this because there's somebody out there that's saying to themselves, well, they know I can't go back to my country. So there's no need for me to apply for temporary protective status, or are just too busy to do that, can't be bothered with it, have other things that are important to them, not really understanding the benefits of the temporary protective status, which can bring you, which is of utmost importance to some of the clients that I have, which is your employment, being able to work. Then after that, being able to apply for some type of legal permanent residency. Also, if you don't proceed it by way of a family petition, you can try to proceed by a way of what we call a labor certification. That means now you work for a company or you work for an entity, and that company is able to sponsor you, where you would get what they call an EB2 or EB3 card or visa. Now, the labor certification route is extremely difficult because, one, if you didn't come into the country with that employment or you weren't recruited, then the company will have to solicit those that are in the country to see if they can meet the needs that is outstanding or necessary to obtain that job. And so let
Mm-hmm.
me repeat that. I live in the United States. I am a welder. Dr. Stacy, since she likes her middle NC Grant, she likes her initials. NC Grant is here, and she's here from Jamaica, let's say, and she has a temporary protective status bestowed on her because of what's going on in her country, so she can't go back. And she's working for a company, and the company really likes her, and they want to make her the welder. So what that company then has to do is they have to solicit by way of union trade magazines, by way of internet, the vacancy that they have in order to give a fair shake to one, U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents to become a welder, like Dr. Grant. She's a welder, right? So to become that welder. Now, you can imagine that there's probably a lot of people in the United States that want that job. So the fact that we got Dr. Stacy NC Grant who applied for the job because she can't go back to Jamaica because she had temporary protective status, and now the company A wants to hire her. Company A now has to do this exploratory interviews of everybody in the state to see if there's somebody who's more worthy, not necessarily because of all skill base, but because of some skill base, but because they are a U.S. citizen or they're a legal permanent resident. And she is trying to obtain that by way of employment. You can imagine that there's probably a lot of employers that say, you know what, that's a lot of digging. I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of researching. That's a lot of putting out notices. And then I'm going to have immigration come and they're going to make sure that you have a W-2 or a W-9. It just puts a lot on a company that just is trying to be benevolent by giving you a job versus recruiting you from another country to come in and do that job.
Well, it's also just explains to people why we see certain things go down the way they do because of all the factors around how to get to the finish line. And having an immigration attorney, someone that you can call to get counsel, because here's the other part of the conversation. A lot of times we don't even engage in finding out the answers culturally because we're afraid of the unknown. And that's why
Right.
it's important to
Correct.
just
Correct.
find out what is actually truth, what's the real law, and how you can connect with someone to have a consultation. I'm sure that you offer consultations, correct?
That is correct. You will give one free consultation over the phone. Usually, it turns out to be more complex than that, and so therefore you come on in and we have to charge you. But at that point, you will leave with an answer, a very secure answer on what you should and should not do. Now,
Absolutely.
we have to understand temporary protective status is a way to delay the inevitable, for which you then should be looking for means to make yourself permanent. It's almost like deferred enforcement of deportation, even though we don't like to use that word deportation anymore. They used to call it DED, now they call it DER, dear. Deferred enforcement of removal. That means we're not gonna do it right now. We have it in our mind to do it, but we're not going to do it right now. It's what we call it's not a good look, if you know what I mean. It's not a good look. You know,
Yeah,
this is going to
clearly.
go down. I'm gonna punch in your face, but I'm just
Oh
not gonna do
Lord.
it for your friends. We're gonna do it a little later on. You know, you came up late. There's gonna be some corporal punishment. We're just not gonna do it in front of here. There's gonna be some time out. It's just not time out right now. So, the first status, as we say.
Well, it's definitely one to pay attention to and to know about. And hey, Richard Russell, thank you for joining in. Kevin, thank you for being here. Deborah, and those who are catching the replay. You know, as we talk about these issues around immigration, as we see the pressure that the Biden administration is under in this particular instance, and the unrest that is happening in so many places around the world, we're going to be spending a lot more time talking about issues with immigration. We still don't have a path to citizenship for individuals here in the US. That has still been on the table with advocates fighting for that. So this is a hot button topic that sometimes gets shifted to the left because of the other pressing priorities that are happening. But it's also good to know the information and to be able to have a legal expert that can shed some light on it. So we appreciate you giving this context and background so that we know exactly what we're watching unfold.
Yeah, I think it's critical because we always know that there's something behind door number one.
Mhm.
And I was surprised to learn, and this is to my ignorance, that there were Africans in Ukraine. It was surprising to me. What was not surprising was the fact that they're getting the underhanded treatment, right? I mean, that's just like, that's just what we see, right? You're not getting the fair treatment. You're not being able to go to the refugee camps. You're not getting that treatment that you need, and so therefore, I think it's important upon me and anyone that knows this to bring it up and to say those that are here, this is what you can do. If no one has told you, I'm telling you. So it says foreign students fleeing Ukraine say they face segregation and racism at the border. Yes,
Mhm.
yes, that's the occurrence that we see. But when you apply for temporary protective status, um, there is no way that racism can surface to the top because it's based on country, and as long as you live in that country, then that's that. That's the
Right.
end of the day. So I'm glad to get this information. It's unfortunate
It's
we,
unfortunate.
we have to give it, but this is where we are, and hopefully, as the world turns and as we become more progressive and we start to erase racism, we can find ourselves in a better place because it's not
Yeah.
only here; it's all over.
It and you know there were some folks that were saying this wasn't happening, and then of course once again, as we talk about all the time, due to social media and people having the ability to capture their own videos and content and able to share it, there were videos that started to go viral about Africans being pushed away, mothers with children. Um, this article references someone being numb just because of the weather conditions already difficult, and standing and trying to get access to some sort of shelter makes an already bad situation worse. So the humanity of it all continues to be in question, and it's heart wrenching just watching all the layers of the challenge unfold, seeing people's sons and daughters heading off to be in these, I guess right now, air quotes, exploratory units or advanced units. I mean, these are people's families, folks that have to say bye to their loved ones with a prayer that they'll be able to return home, because we have seen what has happened in these conflicts that last more than a couple of months, more than a couple of years. So my prayers go out for everyone involved in whatever layer of challenge they're facing as a result of this crisis. And then on a side note, the gas prices seem to be slightly affected already
Slightly.
because of this. So, yeah, I was like, well, I went to fill up my tank, and my husband and I turned around. I said, well, what is happening? And then when you think about it, you realize that the supply chain is connected in different ways to these sorts of international challenges and conflicts. So much more to cover and a lot more to delve into as we see what is happening unfold across the globe and right here at home.
One of the things that, and this is off topic, and I know we have a couple of minutes, and I want to leave this as a thought, and we can engage in a little bit of this. During Black History Month, um, I make it a habit pretty much once a week during the month, and it's more than once a week because I just enjoy doing it, is that I watch what has been typecast as Black exploitation films. And those are films that were produced, written, starred, nothing but Black folks. All the array of the skin tone you see. And I was watching one of my favorites, Buck and the Preacher, right? And that's with Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier directed it. In a lot of these films, either Sidney Poitier or Harry Belafonte or Bill Cosby, they direct these films. They do everything. And it was interesting that there was that how much you can learn from watching it. It's just not all fun and games. Like, oh, look at us and look how we act and how funny we are. As a matter of fact, some of the films are very, very profound. And I watched this one in particular. One of the profound things is that I like the brotherhood that went on between the two. I like the courage that Sidney Poitier had in leading other African American families to the west, to Colorado, free land. And how does it relate to what we're talking about, Mr. Russell? How do we relate? Because it relates in this way. When you think about immigration, you think about what they call snakeheads, right? And what snakeheads are people that lead you from, let's say, the poor country into the United States, right? And those snake runners, those snakeheads, United States and other countries want to get rid of them. Like, who got you here? How did you get through the border? What trails did you take to wind up in the United States? How did you wind up at the fence? How did all those folks get here? Right? Because a snakehead did that. You paid that person and they rain, sleet, or snow, they get you to where you need to go. That's what we talk about now. That's what we see now. Well, you look at Buck and the Preacher back in the 70s when the movie was made, Sidney Poitier, that's what he was. He was a snakehead. He took folks that were just freed. Now, it wasn't from one country to another country. We were in the United States, but folks that was freed, he took them from slave countries to freedom. And so the storyline was white Anglo-Saxons were after him because that's what he was doing. And every time he did, they would burn down, where people would stay for the day until they moved on to the next place. And Harry Belafonte was this preacher that used to take advantage of little small villages like that, preaching the gospel, Christianity. If you make the tie, slavery, Christianity, hope for the future, yet misusing the Bible in a way that you're a servant to this other human being. And so he would preach and he would collect his money. So they became fast friends because they had a mutual enemy, which were the cavalry Anglo Saxons that were after them because they were moving this group of people. That's not the interesting part. Even though the immigration part with the snakehead and reference to Sidney Poitier exists, and it exists way back when, somebody trying to do something good, what was more profound is that in the Ukraine, there are Black Ukrainians or Africans that are staying to fight, but they're getting treated like shit. Their family can't get on the bus. They treated poorly. Round robin to Buck and the Preacher. There's a point where Sidney Poitier, Buck, is speaking with Native Americans, and he's saying to them, look, we got people after us. We got the white folks after us. We're going to need a little help here. We're going to need for you guys to stand up for us and allow this family to go through. Allow us to go through. Help us against them. And they said, we're going to need some guns. This is where the profoundness comes. Stay with me. The Native Americans say, look, we will do everything we can for you. One, but we won't do these two things. One, we won't fight for you. So we're not going to fight the Anglo-Saxons because we already fought the Anglo-Saxons. That's one. So you got to fight your own fight. Two, we're not going to give you any guns. And Sidney Poitier pressed them. Why can't you give us gun? Why can't you use gun? And finally, the Native American chief said, we don't trust you with guns because we gave you guns and you guys had guns. Excuse me. We don't trust you with guns because you guys had guns during the war and you used them against us. You used the guns against us to take our land. So you think I'm going to give you guns now? And that was one person of color, brown, talking to another person of color, black, and saying, look, man, I would love to help you. I would love to be your comrade. I would love to hug you. I would love to do everything. But I don't know, bro. I gave you these guns, you used against our people. And Sidney Poitier's response was, I had no choice. Like, I was stuck either joining this war or being killed myself. And I see the mistake of our people, but I had no choice. The Native American chief did not give him the guns. When the battle ensues and they're trapped, the Native Americans come and rescue them, give them a little help, and they wind up winning the battle, and the families wind up going to Colorado. Why am I telling this story? You have the African Ukrainians, they're going to stay and fight. They're going to stay and fight. White Ukrainians are going to trust them with the Molotov cocktails, and they're going to trust them with all that stuff because they're fighting their war. And they're going to be comrades in war. But what say you after? How do you treat me then? Are we going to have the Sidney Poitier and the Native American chief conversation? And are you really going to be on my side, or are you going to leave me standing? Because I don't see right now, with the Africans complaining, nobody that are white Ukrainians standing up saying, hey, look, we need to let them on this bus. We need to get them to the refugee camps. Shame on you. I don't see any of that. And in order for racism to be eradicated, there has to be a total buy-in from every culture. We see it when we talk about false arrest, police brutality. If there's not a buy-in from white folks, it'll always continue. We see it here. There has to be a total buy-in. And that's the word for the day.
Well, there you have it. That's a way to end the conversation. Interesting way that you looped in seeing that example as a broader way of looking at the buy-in, the allies, the support, the ability to make real substantial change. So great conversation today and insight on this immigration front. We will continue to keep looking at it. And we thank you for tuning in, for being here and participating in the dialogue. So hashtag replay if you're watching the replay and sharing this out. And on behalf of Ed Pichardo Esquire, Mr. Royce Russell Esquire, and myself, we invite you to enjoy the start of Women's History Month and be safe, be well until we meet next time. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.